This poor thing is so wrinkled. I haven't worn him in forever. I never actually watched the show. It's just a really good apron. Hello, welcome. Thanks for tuning in. I wanted to bake cookies, but then I also figured I should film my October wrap-up, so here I am trying to do both. Well, to basically summarize my month, it was all crazy. I had a lot of personal things that happened, and then I got sick, and then I went out on a little trip for a while. It was kind of boring. We went to this place, but the thing about this, I'm not going to tell you where I went. But the thing about this particular place was that it was the off season, so it was basically all dead. But my mom was like, oh, but it's so nice and quiet here. And I'm like, it's so quiet that I am going to eat myself alive. Which is a bit morbid, but when you have ADHD like me, and I've gotten to the point where like absolute silence has become just way too much for me. So that's why I either need the voice in my head to keep me alive or the voice of other people. Right now, it's me talking to myself, talking to you in the future. Book-wise, October was pretty okay for me. It was a mix of like manga and books. Nothing really super stood out to me in particular. During the week that I was traveling with my mom, I ended up reading like 3.5 books because that's just how dead it was. We didn't really do anything wild. It was just one of those like, let's have some rest and relaxation by doing nothing. So I'm like, I cannot do that. So I ended up reading 3.5 books. As I am talking about the books that I read in the month of October, I'm going to be making brown sugar chocolate chip cookies. Why brown sugar? Well, the thing is that, you know the thing about brown sugar when it like hardens and it just becomes a real pain in the ass to, oops, oh shit, oh. All right, what was I saying? The thing about brown sugar is that it's such a pain in the ass. There are ways to work with it once it's hardened to a point. For example, like I grate it. I'm really bad at using things before they expire. Brown sugar doesn't really expire. Like you can still use the crystallized, like the hardened sugar, but it's just a pain. So I'm like, I'm gonna try and use the sugar before I lose my mind with it. So the first book that I want to talk about is actually not one that I finished in October, but I wanted to bring it up anyway because you've probably seen it in the background of some of my videos. And that is the Sunbearer Trials by Aiden Thomas. I didn't really plan on reading this. I feel like that's a thing with me and Aiden Thomas is that I don't plan on reading his books. But then I end up getting them and then I love them. That was the case with me in Cemetery Boys, which you should also read and it's very good for spooky season. I'm packing the brown butter. I know, you can't really see me. 1 second. The thing is, this isn't really a good angle for both what I'm doing and my face because I don't want to cut my head off. This one I really enjoyed. The thing is that like the premise of the Sunbearer Trials is that it takes place in a fictional universe in which the gods live amongst the humans in this new world called Reina del Sol. It's very Latinx inspired fantasy. It's not based on any particular pantheon of real life gods. They're all original gods, original characters. But the premise of this story is very Latinx inspired. So there's a lot of Mayan, Aztec, Mexican inspiration. So the story goes, before we get into the meat of the story, is that there was a god in this world called Sol. The long and the short of it is that there were these evil gods called obsidian gods. And the obsidian gods wanted to throw the world into chaos. The head deity Sol sacrificed themselves in order to trap the obsidian gods in the sky and to protect the people and the humans. And so what the rest of the gods are categorized into golds and jades. And golds are like the head honchos, the flashy ones, the strong ones. And jades are more scholarly, a little perceived as a little more weak. And our main character, Theo, I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Theo. Theo is the sun, the demidios? Semi-dios? It's been a while since I've read this, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm cooking right now so I can't pick up my copy to go check. So basically he's a demigod. He's the demigod he is the son of the goddess of birds. So he is a bird boy, and he's the best bird boy ever. No, he's a little troublemaker. And so the thing is, even though Sol sacrificed themselves in order to save the world, their power has to be refueled every 10 years. And how it's done is that the Sunbearer Trials. I need to do... Okay, so I packed half a cup. That means I needed to do this 2 more times. Oh my god. Why do I even need to pack it in? Well, I guess it's different. It's a different texture than the sugar. Where was I? So every 10 years, blah, 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 blah. 10 years, Sunbearer Trials. So what's done is that 10 semi-dios candidates are chosen to complete these 5 trials, and whoever is the winner becomes the Sunbearer, but whoever is the loser must sacrifice themselves in order to use their life essence to refuel the sunstones, which are the sources of soul's power that traps the obsidian gods in the sky. However, this year, of course, Teo is chosen, which is not very common. Jade semidioses are not really chosen because they're not really seen as, physical and athletic and whatnot. Not just one Jade semidios though, but 2, and the other one is named Shio, and he is basically the Nico D'Angelo of this series, but he is precious and must be protected at all costs. This knowing smile that I'm giving you means there's a plot twist in this story that I absolutely love and did not see coming. The thing is that with Aiden Thomas, he only has 3 books out, but I've read Cemetery Boys. And I think what applies to Cemetery Boys also applies really well to Sunbearer Trials, is that even though, this is YA, I'm 23 years old, I can see what's coming from a mile away. I legit guess, sort of based on just a gut feeling on who the sacrifice was going to be. And I was right. Somehow. Do I even have enough brown sugar? I should. Oh my god. What did I use all this brown sugar for? I haven't opened this jar in ages. You're still good? Okay, you're still kind of good. Alright, what was I saying? And so, okay, yeah. So it's typical YA. So I could see everything coming from a mile away. I legit guessed everything about Cemetery Boys plot. But I love Cemetery Boys because it's the writing style, it's the cultural aspects that I love, because Cemetery Boys is based on Dia de los Muertos, and Sunbearer Trials is heavily based on all sorts of different types of Latinx culture. It's just something about it that makes the world so rich, no matter if it's our world or a secondary fantasy. And that just makes everything really interesting and engaged, even when you are an adult reader like me. I think especially Latinx readers will definitely see inspirations. I don't know much about Latinx culture or history, but the reason why I just happened to pick this up was that I went to go see Aiden Thomas when he went to go visit New York City. He did an event with Kaylin Barron. During the talk, there were Latinx advanced readers who were like, oh, I noticed this city was based off of this real life Mexican city. And he was like, yes, that's exactly what I was going for. And I'm like, oh, I don't know that. So I think definitely Latinx readers will get more out of this than I did. Cause I found this really enjoyable without getting lost, because Thomas's writing was so detailed, but I think they're definitely the Easter eggs, so to speak, for Latinx readers. And yeah, please let me know in the comments about anything fun, historical, or cultural that I might have missed reading this. Cause I just enjoyed it, cause I kind of envisioned each city as other cities, but I just kept picturing Teo in his home city, Queens, he's the Peter Parker in Queens, which is not wrong, except everybody knows that he is the son of the bird goddess. So I don't know, it was funny that way. And yes, this is also very queer, very lovely queer story. Teo is trans, Shio is trans, and there are so many aspects of this world that are so affirming to LGBTQ identities. For example, there is a gender confirmation ceremony, which is sort of this way of celebrating your identity, celebrating gender, and very accepting of trans identities, very accepting of gay and all queer identities, which is really refreshing, because honestly, when it comes to some fantasy stories and worlds, I always feel kind of cautious of when it comes to them portraying queer identities. And it's just at this point I'm just so bored of any fantasy that doesn't have queer identities, because it's well, you can do whatever you want and yet you chose to keep homophobia and transphobia in. That's just so boring of you. I'm not talking about any particular author just speaking in general, really. But yeah, the way that Sunbearer Trials ended, that was definitely because even though I guessed the sacrifice, I'm like, okay, I know what's gonna happen. There was another plot twist in there that I did not expect, and I feel like if I reread Sunbearer Trials, maybe I could have picked up the clues. But for the moment, it was just that second plot twist was like out of left field, and I really can't wait to see what comes next. Aiden Thomas is one of my favorite authors, and I really enjoy the Sunbearer Trials. And there's even going to be a sequel to Cemetery Boys, which honestly I am a little hesitant about, because when some books work well as a standalone and then they suddenly kind of get a sequel, many times I've been disappointed by it. I'm thinking about, I guess if I had to call out, like there was Hold My Hand by Michael Barakiva. I really enjoyed One Man Guy. That was the first book, because I guess also I was quite young when I first read it. When did it come out? I think I was 15. It was just one of the first YA books with like an explicitly gay relationship that I read, so it kind of holds like a special place in my heart. But then One Man Guy comes out, I'm like, this throws everything I enjoyed about the first book into question. So what else was there? I don't remember, but like, yeah, so something like that. That's why I still haven't read Darius, The Great Deserves Better by Adib Khorram. I hope I'm pronouncing that last name correct, because I really enjoyed Darius the Great Is Not Okay. Like, that was like, I don't cry with books very often. I, of course, like, react emotionally, but like full on, like, tears out crying, that doesn't happen like very often at all. So, but Darius the Great did that with me. So I guess because of that, I'm still like really hesitant. Even though like I've heard good things about it, I'm still hesitant to read Darius the Great Deserves Better. So that's just how I feel about that. So definitely when you get a chance, Sunbearer Trials is the one to watch, or the one to read in this case. I feel like I've been packing this goddamn brown sugar for ages. So the next book that I read is another fantasy, and that was The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. This one was a very solid fantasy read. So for those of you who don't know, Jasmine Throne is an Indian-inspired fantasy that takes place in a whole new world. And in this world, where do I even begin? It's quite the dense kind of fantasy with its own rich history. It's an adult fantasy, so it's not like, you know, the YA fantasy like Sunbearer Trials was, where you can kind of digest the world pretty much in the first book. But basically in this world there is, I'm not even going to try to pronounce the names, mostly because I forgot how to pronounce them. But in this world there is the empire, and then there are the countries it conquered. Paradivad is the empire, and Ashiranya is the main colonized country that we follow one of our main characters, Priya, in. And Priya is a handmaiden. However, she has the secret of being one of the surviving temple children of the Hirana, or the Hirama. And so basically, her powers are, I don't want to say religious, but they're connected to the ancient Yaksha, which are these monsters of like Adhyanya. I'm so sorry, I forgot how like these are spelled, and I took the book out of the library, so I don't have a copy with me. But basically Priya has secrets, and she has chosen in the beginning of the book to try and do her best to save her people, even as they are under imperial rule. The second main character we follow is the Imperial Princess Malini. And her thing is that her brother is the emperor of the empire, and he ordered her to be immolated. He orders her to basically self-immolate in the name of religious purity, and she says no. But she is racked with guilt because two of her best friends went into the flame. And so she has to carry this for the rest of her life. But she is imprisoned in the Harana, where Priya is a handmaiden for her. Basically, so the story goes is that Priya and Malini's fates are now intertwined. What Malini wants to do is escape to get her other brother, who's this guy who's really frustrating because he's like, he's like kind of going on one of those like trips, like self-finding trips, where he's like, oh, where is our place in the world? What is the fate that we are given? I'm gonna go stare at this pool of water until I figure it out. I'm not gonna be emperor. I'm gonna join the priesthood for the nameless god. Bye. And Melini's like, bro, please, he is killing women in the name of religious purity. Like, can you please come back? And he's like, no. And it's so frustrating. But I need to mix this melted butter. I'm doing a really bad job at explaining the Jasmine Throne because there are a lot of different characters. I read this a while ago so I don't totally remember. But overall, it's a really solid fantasy series because there are multiple characters and each of them have their own motivations, their own set of principles, their own methods of survival under this imperial rule. For example, there is Priya's temple sister named Bhumika, and she is basically kind of, I don't want to say turned traitor, but she basically has married into the imperial like regime, and using that position of power in the imperial family, so to speak, she chooses to help out her people in her own ways, making sure that the orphans get jobs, taking care of the people who are sick, because there's also like a magical plague going around. And really quick, I'm gonna mix this butter. I don't want to use like a hand mixer, even though in a normal circumstances I probably would have, but for now I'm just gonna use this wooden spoon. I feel like a ratatouille. Okay, I need to do the egg yolk trick. Egg right. Okay, gently. I can do this. It's fine if there's a little egg white on the egg yolk as long as there's not too much egg white. Alright. Anyway, back to me. Without going too much into the plot of Jasmine Throne, mostly because I will absolutely get all the names wrong and I don't totally remember exactly the series of events of what happened. But what I love about Jasmine Throne is its very solid world building. There is a whole history of what happened before the Imperial Empire moved in to colonize this country. And even this country has its own history of what it was like pre-colonialization. They had this age of the yakshas, which are these like nature spirits who are neither malevolent nor benevolent. They're sort of like fairies in a way. And they're the subject of legend, the subject of myth, and sort of maybe they're religious, I don't want to say icons, but like a subject of like a kind of a religious order. And then the Imperial Empire itself has its own religion of the Mothers of Flame, which, if I'm reading it correctly, was like a branch of another religion that another country was a part of, about the nameless god. So there are these different types of religions, different ways in which different characters interact with those religions, such as the part that I love is that one of the princes of the other countries that worship the nameless god is that in their culture, their true names are prophecies. And so when your prophecy is something as dire as like a death prophecy, then that kind of really shapes the direction of your life and how you react to your fate. For example, this is really a minor spoiler, but one of Melini's friends who died at the pyre, her true name was how she was going to die. And she knew from the moment she understood her true name was that she was going to die by flame. And so like that just really informs the people and how they live their lives in this country, which is really just like a fascinating concept to explore. So honestly, Jasmine Throne was really good in terms of world building. What I thought it was a little bit weak on was romance. The main romance is between Priya and Melini, and a little bit of like similarly to what I talked about in Sunbearer Trials, this fantasy world takes their like homophobia a little bit differently, in which the main country actually never really had homophobia, like same-sex relationships and marriages were quite common, but then it was when they were colonized. I keep messing up colonized. When they were colonized, like same-sex relationships were banned. So, which is quite eerily similar to what happens in real life. I hope I didn't put in too much butter. It looks quite liquidy right now. I'm interested to see where they'll take that concept forward in regards to how the colonizer like really goes forward, because it really is a reflection of real life colonialism, in which not just they like impose rules on who are they not allowed to marry and have relationships with, but also what kinds of stories they're allowed to tell each other. Excuse me. Because there are these bits in the story talking about rebellion is how like the main rebels are like poets and scholars, because they are engaging with stories that are forbidden. But anyway, going off of that, the main romance is between Priya and Malini. And from the direction, from my perspective, is that I personally liked their relationship as like a slow burn, because they were very like wary of each other, but they were also attracted to each other, which is something I can respect. 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract. And so from the direction they were going, and also their focus on escaping and rebellion, I kind of preferred it to simmer in the back and explode at some point. But the way it went is that they shared some kisses towards the end. In the context of those kissing scenes, I'm like, okay, I think I get it, but I'm still not quite convinced. Because I personally feel like a level of physical intimacy should come like after. Oh, 1 second. Sorry, real quick. Look at this mix. Now it's starting to really come together in like a delicious look. I don't want to tip it over so that it spills, but like it's starting to really come together. It looks a little bit like gingerbread. Okay, now I gotta shift in 3 cups of flour. Woohoo. I'm sorry, I'm like talking while I'm like bang, bang, banging. Do I even have a proper shift? Because I'm sifting, because I only think I have a teaspoon one. Oh my god. Oh boy. Can I use my coffee filter as a sifter? Maybe I could. Where's my flour? My flour box is here. I don't know why I find this to be such a common like critique of mine, is romance is going too fast. Because like the thing is, one of my favorite romance, I don't consider Captive Prince a romance book. I consider it like a fantasy drama book with some action and like a plot of romance in it. But like, I guess it's because one of the like Captive Prince don't have their first kiss until the end of book 2. I mean, my other favorite romances do have their first kisses within their books, and like I find it to be a good progression. But like, I guess with something as big a scale as Jasmine Throne is, because there's so many different characters, I understand why they would have their first kiss of the first book, but like just a progression. I don't know, because there's probably stuff that went on when we weren't with them in the book. I just think it would have been, my personal reading of their relationship was that it was a slow progression, and then at some point it would explode. But they have some first kisses, and they do admit their affection for each other in the first book. But so I am interested to see where it goes in book 2, because, minor spoiler, they do separate at the end of book 1. So with book 2, the Oleander Sword, where Priya and Malini end up, and how they go forward from here, not just as people, but in their own relationship. That's something definitely that I'm really interested to see. So I definitely do recommend Jasmine Throne. Honestly, a really solid fantasy book, Indian inspired, and also very culturally rich, very nicely detailed. And just, I don't know, made me want to watch a Bollywood film, which is weird to say. But the thing is, I've actually never watched a Bollywood film. So I feel like I'm like, damn, I'm like missing out on a whole like a subset of cinema. So this just kind of really made me want to explore more like it. So honestly, and I think that's a very good job for a book to do. I'm trying to be clever with what I'm about to do. I'm going to use my teaspoon sifter right now. Look, okay, so just look at the size of my sifter, and I have to do 3 cups in this tiny sifter because I don't have a real big sifter, okay? So while I do that, I'm going to talk about the next book, which is basically I'm going to do like a quick run through on some manga that I read. So real quick, I read 4 manga this month, and the first one is, so basically okay, for like manga people who don't, or for non-manga people who don't know, there was I think they were a North American manga distributor called Tokyopop. Back in, I think I read this, it was 2011. They basically basically shut down, and we all thought they were like bankrupt. But a while back, they're back now. So one of their like I guess subsections is Love, which focuses on romance manga. And of course they have FF manga and MM manga. And one of them I read was called Yagi the Bookshop Goat, which is a one-shot manga in which they're not anthropomorphic, hybrid animal humans live in this world, and it's a little bit reminiscent of Zootopia, but not really. It's a little bit reminiscent by way of, in this world there are 2 zones, and one of them is the carnivore zone. The other one is the herbivore zone. And of course, Yagi, who's a goat, lives in the herbivore zone, but he works in a bookshop in the carnivore zone. And Yagi has a bad habit of eating books, which makes him not a very good bookshop employee. But Ogami? It was either Okami or Ogami, which basically means wolf in Japanese. But his boss, Ogami, lets him stay even though he constantly scolds him for eating bugs. So, just a quick thought. Okay, it's probably not very appealing to listen to my voice while I'm tapping on this glass. So just a quick recap. This was just a cute one-shot manga. There isn't a whole lot of spice in it, but there is some. And the art is really cute. And the relationship between Yagi and Okami is also really cute. And really, this is just one of those fun little reads. If you're into boys love manga, and if you're into the cute side of boys love manga. And I'm just really, Tokyopop is really leaning in hard on all of their LGBT titles, not just MM and FF. Of course, MM is the most popular at the moment, but it's just cute. But speaking of FF relationships, I read the first volume of Catch These Hands. So what Catch These Hands follows these 2 women who are in adulthood. I forgot their names. But basically the premise is that these 2 girls were both sort of high school delinquent types. But now they've grown up. And one of them is you know what? I need to leave my delinquent days behind. But she reunites with the girl she basically had the most fights with, and this girl reveals that she's had a crush on her this entire time, and so they decided to give a relationship a try. And this one's okay. Honestly, I hate to say that girls love manga is really much a hit or a miss. I guess the problem is that they're just really too light. They're really just kind of surface level. I don't know, something about, I don't know why there's such a big difference in story between, because the thing I find about girls love manga is that they're really just surface level. So I'm sure they'll explore it more in later volumes, but I guess it's because they don't really get physical most of the time in girls love manga. And so, but Catch These Hands, I just really like the title too. It's just really cute, and I am willing to give this another shot. But most of all, it's just kind of an okay 3-star read, because I don't know, I think the thing is that these are 2 women who are trying to make it in adulthood, and I respect that. I'm always interested in characters who are coming of age, not just in when they're teenagers, but also when they're adults, because coming of age is hard. You're always coming of age in a way, in different aspects of your life. Am I up to 3 cups yet? So Catch These Hands, it was a really cute girls love manga. Going back into boys love for a hot bit, this manga I'm really interested in because it doesn't really feel like a boys love manga on the surface, but it is. And that is, get this title, The Other World's Books Depend on the Bean Counter, Volume 1. What beans are they counting? I don't know. But the premise of this one, I always forget their names. I'm so sorry. The premise of this one is that an overworked salaryman gets isekai'd. For those of you who don't know, isekai is this popular trope in anime and manga in which it's basically portal fantasy. So isekai means another world. So he gets isekai'd into another world with a stranger, a woman. This woman becomes the holy maiden of this fantasy world that they've found themselves portaled into. She is the holy maiden who is going to save this world from this evil magical pollution. So she's off doing that. So this poor guy who's the mob character, who's the background guy, everyone is oh my god, you were kind of tossed in with the holy maiden, but you know what, we'll take care of you. Just don't worry about it. You're from the other world. Sorry we kind of accidentally pulled you out. And he's because the thing is, this guy was an overworked salaryman for his whole life. He can't just stop. So he's give me a job. I'm really good at math. I'm really good at accounting. I can't sit idly by. I've been working my whole life and I can't just stop now. So they're oh shit, really? You can just chill out. It's no, just give me a job in your accounting department or financial department or whatever. So most of this manga is like I don't want to say slice of life, because slice of life implies that it's cute, but it's basically like a day-to-day drama in the lives of the accounting department of this fantasy world and this fantasy castle. So while he's doing that, he's like, I've sniffed out some problems with your accounting, and I'm about to like tear shit up from the ground up and like help you guys actually do good at your jobs. And they're like, okay. And then so it's the captain of, I don't want to, he's not the royal guard exactly, but he is a captain of the royal guard. And he's like suspicious of him from the start. It's like, who are you? You came from another world and now you're just working in our accounting department? For the most part, this manga is like the main character's like accounting department, like day-to-day work life, and how you are kind of just yelling at him to just stop. These are unhealthy behaviors because he like loads himself up on like magical energy drinks. Like Japan has a huge problem with overworking, and so one of the things they would do is of course energy drinks, coffee. The main character overloads himself on magical energy drinks, but because he is not trained in magical consumption, he basically kind of goes into like an overheat. And so the captain of the royal guard has to step in with some spice to help him out. Wink, wink, if you get what I'm saying. And that doesn't come in until the end. I think the thing is because the world building is so solid, that makes this different from all other BL fantasy types. So I am looking forward to volume 2. This first volume was definitely sort of an introduction, a prologue, a chapter 1, so to speak. And there's definitely more to explore once we see the Holy Maiden and the questions surrounding this world and why they were transported into it. So that's definitely something to look forward to. Also, the title is just so whack. The other world's books depend on the bean counter. What does that mean? Are there beans? I think I tried to look up what the original Japanese title was. I don't remember if I did. And I'm like, where did they get this translation from? Like, what does this mean? I guess I'm looking forward to what the beans are, which is why I still read this. Sorry, is this 3 cups? Maybe, I'm gonna measure it out real quick. But in the meantime, I'm gonna quickly rattle off the 4th manga that I read, which is another BL, because this is just kind of the mood I'm in right now. So the 4th manga that I read is actually not the first volume, but it's a series that I followed for a long time. And that is Therapy Game Restart Volume 2 by Meguru Hinohara. So this is a boys love series. The first book was Secret XXX, which is such a funny title. But I read this before it was officially published into English. So I've been a big fan of this series for a while. It's pretty much like a pretty standard BL series, but definitely what's interesting is this therapy game. It's interesting because Secret XXX was the first book. So you imagine those two would be the main couple. BL always used to have this thing where like the side couple was more interesting than the main couple, but I guess this author was like, actually the side couple is more interesting than the main couple. So the main couple gets 1 volume, and now the side characters of the first book get like a 4-book series. We haven't seen the main couple. Oh my god, we haven't seen them. Were they even in the last 2 volumes? So Therapy Game Restart is the 4th book of the Therapy Game series, which follows these 2 guys. How they met was shenanigans ensue, a drunken night, misremembering, blah blah blah, like a bunch of usual BL tropes. But now when we're going into Therapy Game Restart is that they're actually trying to like have a life together, which is really sweet because one of them has insecurities from his parents' marriage, and the other one wants to be supportive and like not rush into things, but is also like overworked because he's a vet tech in a really tough clinic. So where Therapy Game, I'm not going to get much into it other than like, if you're into BL and you're into BL with really good art, Therapy Game Restart, and also like all of Meguru Hinohara, like, because she also did doujins. Her art is fantastic. It's so beautiful. So if you're into like really good art and really spicy scenes, then just definitely like this series is the one for you. But where Therapy Game Restart 2 ended, it ended in a really interesting place because oh my god, I have to shift more flour. Because we're kind of unlocking more aspects of Minato's past. Minato is the blonde guy, the bitchy blonde guy, which You know, honestly, they're just my type, I guess. Bitchy blondes and supportive tops. And so if you're into that, that's the one for you. Honestly, I highly because the art is just really good. Because sometimes the art can be kind of a miss, but there's just something about like the art and how it's like cute and also like just solid, and the spicy scenes are also really good. And they don't feel gratuitous. They just feel like really naturally ingrained into the story. I think I'm gonna run out of flour. But anyway, I'm gonna keep shifting it. So that was just a really quick recap of all the manga that I read. But before I end this, because then we're going into like the 4 books, the 4 books that I read while I was out on vacation with my mom. And these are the spooky books. The first book I read for the spooky season of October. The first book that I read for the spooky season of October was Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. Yes. So, as some of you may know by now, the AMC series has been out for a minute. I think the first season is about to end. I never actually finished Interview with the Vampire. I did try to read it when I was perhaps just too young to understand it. Like, my cousins were just giving their copy away, and I'm like, ooh, vampire, okay. And I tried to read it, but I think I just stopped. When did I stop? I think I stopped when Lestat died. I would do air quotes right now. Died the first time by Claudia. But I think it was like 10 or something. And I just didn't get it. I was just reading the words. I'm like, I don't understand what's going on. So reading it now, honestly, okay, so maybe I'm just like one of the minority in this. I didn't super enjoy Interview with the Vampire. The book. I haven't watched the AMC series yet because I don't have cable, and also I don't have AMC Plus. But I'll get to it. Of course I will. But so the book itself, just focusing solely on the book. So the thing is, I get it, but I don't get it. So I know that the nature of Gothic novels is just to be a little bit weird. A little bit too weird, and I'm like, okay, like just be a little taboo all the time, and I'm like, I get it, because like Louis is like racked with Catholic guilt, and Lestat is the hedonist, and just like the real bitchy blonde all the time, and you know bitchy blondes are my type, but Lestat in the book was just really annoying, and I'm like, I get why people like him, but he's just such a huge, I understand it, but I don't. I think that's just the thing with me in this particular novel. I understand what people got out of it. Like, I think if I were a different reader, I would have enjoyed this more. But the way that it stands, the language just kind of creeped me out, especially when it came to Louis and Claudia. Even though I understood what Claudia meant to Louis in a way that, like, he just, like, lived vicariously through her by way of her childish innocence, even though she was no longer a child after a certain point. She just became, like, a woman trapped in a child body by being a vampire. Should I even explain the plot of Interview with the Vampire to you? When did it even come out? It came out in 90s? But anyway, real quick, for those of you who don't know what Interview with the Vampire is about, but basically Interview with the Vampire is, as the name says, it's an interview by Louis to this man named, not Nathaniel, his name is Daniel, and he's recounting his life, his like 600-year-old, no, not 600, like 300-year-old life as a vampire. How it all started in New Orleans, and he met this vampire named Lestat. More like Lestat just kind of barged into his house and said, hey, I'm gonna take this house because my father is dying, and I'm gonna turn you into a vampire. And poor Louis, who's like racked with guilt after the death of his brother, is like just kind of ends up a vampire. And so because it's an interview format, it goes through events quite fast. And I guess perhaps because it's an interview solely from Louis' perspective, a lot of the events are no doubt tainted by his unreliable narration, which I guess is perhaps why Lestat is so featured in a unfavorable light, because that's his ex-boyfriend right there. That's his ex-husband. He's not about to be favorable to him. But he recounts his life as a vampire, living in New Orleans, and then going off to find more vampires in Paris, and all that entails. I was just kind of slogging through it because like I said, I get it, but I don't get it. So I definitely do think it's required reading, not just for the vampires, but for the queer analysis as well, because they do have some sort of connection. And also Lestat is just a disaster buy. I definitely do recommend the AMC show once you get a chance, because it expands Louis and Lestat's relationship more, and also casts a black man in this role of Louis, which really changes everything, because there is some outdated language in Interview with the Vampire, and I was like, I get it. Like I said, Interview with the Vampire was a 3-star read for me. I get it, but also I don't get it. What can you do? Everything's a hit or a miss at some point. The next book that I read for spooky season, and also following the trend of vampires, is A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson, I believe. So I was really feeling like a Dracula vampire vibe thanks to Interview with the Vampire being out on AMC. So I took this out of the library just on a whim. It's I guess you can say it's a novella because it's quite short. It follows the 3 brides of Dracula, told through the perspective of the first wife. So it's sort of like Interview with the Vampire. It's a retelling of her life with Dracula and also the introduction of the next 2 brides. And it's also very gay because the 3rd bride was a man named Alexei. But what I think struck out to me about Dowry of Blood is that it is, I guess you can say, it's a very thinly veiled allegory for abusive relationships because Dracula, they don't say him by name. Constanta addresses him as you. I'm getting you thoughts. I'm getting a you thought right now. I guess you can say it's a confession as to why she had to murder him. I'm almost done. I need to shift some more goddamn flour. So it's really like a short, sexy, dark book about traveling with Dracula, traveling with the other 2 brides, and what he did for them and what he did to them. Because Dracula was controlling, he was demanding, he demanded no questions, he demanded they just like kind of just shut up and be with him. And if they ask too many questions, then perhaps something might happen and they can't live without him. Very much like all very textbook abusive behavior. Isolation, no emotional care because one of the brides falls into like cycles of depression, no doubt, because she used to be so lively as a human and she was so like enamored with the thought of eternal life. But once he restricted her activities, once he like forbade her from seeing humans and interacting with humans and like engaging with the things she used to enjoy, she falls into a depression. So that is like textbook abusive behavior. So like, I guess these are all trigger warnings. I'm so sorry. This is basically like a long, thinly veiled allegory for an abusive relationship. And the first bride is like confessing this to us and addressing it to Dracula. They never mention him by name. And if I had to give it a critique, I expected this to be more connected to the original Bram Stoker Dracula story. For example, like the Harkers get like 1 mention. I thought at some point they would circle it into the original Dracula, like when Jonathan Harker, I think I never actually read Dracula, but if I remember the way of the story, it's like Jonathan Harker comes into the castle and Dracula's like, hey, can you please like write 5 letters in advance telling your family you're okay? And then also like poor Jonathan gets like tormented by these sexy vampire bride ladies, and it's like, no, I thought they were gonna circle it in and like explore how like Dracula like got originally vanquished by Helsing, but in the end it was really just spoiler alert, well maybe not, but in the end the Harkers get like 1 mention. So I wish they would have like factored the original in more, but oh well, like stuff happens. I like the ending. It was hopeful in a way. Yeah, I get the thing about Dowry of Blood is that it is, in my interpretation, is the very thinly veiled allegory for an abusive relationship. So there isn't any like sexual assault or any like graphic violence or anything like that, but there's just a lot of like red flags you would see in any other abusive relationship when it's not with a vampire man. So just some heads up for that. But honestly, it was a good, short, sexy book. Perfect for spooky season, perfect for vampire season. This is the season of the vampire we're in right now. If you definitely feel like you want something like that, give Dowry of Blood a go. A Dowry of Blood. It's a Dowry of Blood, ma. You never know what you're gonna get. This must be the most unappealing cooking video you've probably ever watched because you can't even see what I'm doing with my hands. One day I'll figure out a way, but the thing is that my camera's not... my camera is my phone. So the thing about my phone, even though it's a nice phone, I'm gonna need a much bigger setup in order to get like the wide shot. Right now I'm using the selfie camera, which only has the 1 lens, so I can't really like, unless I zoom out. Let me see if I can do that. No, I can't zoom out. Okay, so these are the only 2 vampire books that I read this month, but that's not the end of my spooky season. I also read, and that is is it A City or The City? City of Bones by Victoria Schwab. It came up on my Libby and I'm like, well, I finished Dowry of Blood and I finished Interview with the Vampire, and those are the only 2 books that I brought with me. So you know what? Yes, I need more books. So let me just take this out. And I read this in 2 hours because it was like a 3-hour train ride during my vacation. It's a short middle grade book by Victoria Schwab, who's also the author of other wonderful books such as the Shades of Magic series. Follows this young girl named Cassidy. Yes. Cassidy Blake, and her parents are ghost hunters? No, they're paranormal investigators, and so they get an opportunity to go to Scotland to film a TV show. And the thing about Cassidy, however, is that even though her parents are paranormal investigators, she is the only one who can actually see ghosts. Okay, real quick, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, a sip of water, and 3/4 teaspoon. Wow, that's a very specific. I don't have a 3/4. Oh, here's my quarter. Okay. 3/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. Don't ask me what accent I'm doing. So, Cassidy's the only one of her family who can actually see ghosts because of a near-death encounter. And her best friend, Jacob, is a ghost. So she goes to Scotland trying to evade all of these ghostly hijinks when she meets a girl named Laura or Lana. No, it's Laura. It's Laura, I think. Whoops. Finally mixing in the solids, so this thing is really coming together. So she meets a girl named Laura who teaches her about the ways of being a ghost hunter, because Cassidy has attracted the attention of a particularly nefarious ghost, and she and Jacob are in serious trouble. It was quite a short read. I was surprised on how fast it was going. I finished it in like 2.5 hours of this 3-hour train ride, and I did enjoy it very much because, you know, Victoria Schwab, a solid writer. The thing is about this book is that what I was quite surprised about was that the pacing was really quite fast. It is, I guess, similar to the nature of the show. Like, the parents are doing like 1 episode in one like historical haunted city. So like that, for example, the second book, I believe it's called Tunnel of Bones, takes place in Paris. So I guess by nature, like in a similar nature, the Cassidy Blake series is sort of doing a similar thing where it's like just like an episodic type of deal, which is why they're short and why each like book feels like really tied up but also quite fast. It's like, I guess it's sort of like a Monster of the Week situation. But because of the nature of its fast pace, I didn't really feel like we got to explore a whole lot. It just kind of just kept going. Like, oh, we're exploring Scotland. Oh, we're getting chased by the by the ghost, and now we have to fight the ghost. And then the ghost is dead and now we're going home. I'm like, okay, what? So that's why I guess I don't know if I'm gonna read the next book because it is a middle grade. It was solid, but like I'm like it's okay. I think I would definitely recommend it to like my own cousins who are of like when they get to the middle grade age for reading, because they're quick, they're easy, and they're enjoyable. But the pacing was really quite fast for me, and like it just felt complete as it was, but then also like open to the next series because now she's gone off to Paris. Cassidy in Paris. Oh, I have cinnamon sticks in here. I just bought some cinnamon shards. Whoopsies. Okay, so now we're finally up to the chocolate chips. This is looking like a real solid, a real nice cookie dough. Ooh, smell that semi-sweet chocolate chips. If they were to make Cassidy Blake into a TV show, I would watch it though. That's like, I guess, the good thing that I'm gonna say about it. There are a lot of good things to say. It was a solid read. If you're into that, then I recommend it. Like if middle grade is your jam, if you're into quick reads, then I definitely think Cassidy Blake is a go. It was very appropriately spooky for spooky season. That's definitely a high point for it. So the next book that I read for the month of October that is also spooky season, but not spooky in the paranormal way. Now we're going spooky into the not normal, but not paranormal way. And that is None Shall Sleep by Ellie Marney. This was pitched as a YA Silence of the Lambs, and it definitely is. So the premise of this book is that it's the 1980s and the FBI is investigating teen serial killers. And similar in the vein, if you ever watched Mindhunter, the FBI hires 2 teens to interview the incarcerated teenage serial killers, and their names are Travis, who is a candidate for the U.S. Air Marshal thing, and Emma, who is a survivor of a serial killer. So using their insights and the fact that they themselves are teenagers, they send them out to interview teen serial killers and see what's up with them, you know? Like Mindhunter, basically like Mindhunter. The interviews are actually not the main focus of the story. The main focus is that a serial killer is targeting teenagers, and the FBI is having a doozy trying to figure out the case. So Emma and Travis catch wind of this and are eventually assigned to investigate the most notorious teen serial killer of them all, named Simon Gutmanson, which is quite the serial killer name, Gutmanson. But Simon Gutmanson is a teen sociopath. He is the Hannibal Lecter of this series. And he is also the one who killed Travis's father. So Emma is the one who is sent to interview him alone. And they play these sort of like mind games, sort of these like tug-of-war conversations in which Emma wants to get information out of him to stop this serial killer who's targeting teens. And he wants to like pick her apart, basically. Just basically like Hannibal Lecter's like, did you hear the lambs cry, Clarice? Or however that line went. Or the lambs screaming, Clarice. This one was definitely an interesting one, because I think at some point I was afraid it was too much like Silence of the Lambs. But I think overall, it's definitely different, because the thing is that Emma herself is the survivor of a serial killer. She was like a near victim of a serial killer who was like locking girls in their basement. And then when she managed to escape, that serial killer like killed all the other girls in captivity. So Emma herself has to deal with a lot of lasting trauma from that incident. And so Simon is definitely like picking her. That is basically her lambs. Her lambs were the girls that she left behind. But then like Simon's like picking apart, like, do you feel guilty? Like, or did you know that he was gonna kill them when you escaped? That kind of stuff. Okay, anyway, look at this beautiful dough. No white sugar, just melted butter and brown sugar, but it looks like a really solid dough. But now I gotta do the fun job of making these into balls. Definitely this was a really solid, standalone, psychological horror drama type of story if you're into that. I don't know if I should measure these or I should just do these by eye. I'm just gonna do these by eye. I'm not gonna use my tablespoon. If you're into things like Mindhunter, like Silence of the Lambs, definitely give this book a shot. I'm always really interested in like these type of psychologically charged type of stories, especially like not just like Hannibal, also, you know, like NBC's Hannibal, the one that definitely focuses on crime, like get into the minds of criminals. What are they thinking? What are they trying to do? And there's also perhaps their weaknesses as well. What are they willing to do to get what I think that's just the common thing that I'm really interested in stories, is that what are characters willing to do, and what do characters want, and what are they willing to do to get what they want? Because Simon has a weakness. I'm not going to spoil it. Seeing the way that these characters all interact and their emotions surrounding each other, and not just that, but also their history, because Travis has a history with Simon. So because I don't want to go into spoilers, I'm just going to kind of cap it off here, that if you enjoy things like Mindhunter, true crime, Hannibal, Silence of the Lambs, definitely this is a good one. I don't think it is perhaps like it, because it does follow the plot structure devices of Silence of the Lambs by way of talking to like a master criminal to find another criminal. But like I said, it differs enough because Emma herself is the survival of a serial killer and she's a teenager, rather than Clarice, who is a part of the FBI. We don't have like a gross mischaracterization of trans folks by way of Buffalo Bill. Hooray. Remember there was that like spin-off show about Clarice? I think it was called Clarice, and then it was slammed and then nobody remembered. Just give us season 4 of Hannibal instead, guys, come on. I'm gonna cap it off here because October is the spooky season, but there are more books that I read, but I think I'm I'm gonna put them off until my November wrap up because I don't know what I'm reading right now. Well, I'm reading the thing is right now in November, I'm like reading a bunch of different books. It was the same problem in like September and October where I just kind of start too many books because my attention span is like suffering right now. But if I manage to finish freaking the small door stopper that is Jasmine Throne, I think I'm okay. I'm just trying to just like, I think the problem is that like because October was so wild for me, I need to just calm down and like just sit back and like chill. And maybe this is a message for you if you need to hear this right now that like, you know, life is crazy and kind of shitty, but it's okay to just sit down and chill for a minute. Just bake cookies, talk to yourself, remember all the cool books that you read, and you know, think about the cool books you're reading now. For example, a sneak peek into my November wrap up, if you will. I read 2 really interesting memoirs by really interesting people. It's very vague, but it's true. One of them is food related, which was fun, and which is why I'm doing some food right now. Alrighty, I'm gonna pause the recording here and show you the cookies when they're done. Look at these. They look a little pale, but they look really good. The bottoms of the sill pat are a little lighter than, I put these in for 10 minutes because I thought they were too pale. Oops, chocolate. Because I thought they were too pale, but they're really good, crispy on the edges. The parchment paper made it a little darker than the sill pat, but I think they're both good. Oh, these two stuck together. Whoops. Okay, I'm gonna try one. This one looks good. This is from the sill pat. Smells nice. I like this one. It's definitely not as sweet because it's only brown sugar and not white sugar. And because I use semi-sweet chocolate chips, definitely not as sweet. But definitely has like a quality about it that makes you want to eat more of them. Okay, but yeah, this was my October wrap-up / cookie baking video. I hope you enjoyed. So let me know what books that you read in the month of October. Let me know your spooky ones. Let me know your non-spooky ones. Let me know if you happen to read any that I mentioned in this video. The thing, I have to work on my kitchen setup. My phone is my camera and it doesn't have a very good wide angle lens. I mean, I can make it wide. It's just, it's my first baking video, so we're gonna learn as we go. Kiss your fan and friends goodnight. Maybe give them a cookie. And I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.